I also launched my company later in May, but really started conceptualizing the idea during my sophomore year of college. If you guys don't know, Durham is in North Carolina, so it is not a legal state and will probably be one of the last. But the company that I started is an accessories device, a storage device for multiple forms of cannabis, joints, edibles, loose leaf. I'm excited to be here, share my story. It's definitely interesting starting a company while on campus, and especially in this industry, and especially in a non-legal state. But I think you'll find a lot more people around you who are interested in what you're doing and want to help. So I hope we can do that for you today.
Thanks, Julia. I'm Isaac, everyone. Nice to virtually meet you. I am the founder of Z's Life Essentials. It is a New York-based accessories brand that develops elegant and sophisticated smoking products to enhance the overall smoking experience. We started right now off with just rolling papers and small objects like a tamp and a rolling tray. But really, my story began when I was about 18 years old and about to get into college. And I have entrepreneurial roots in my family with my brother and father. And I kind of took that inspiration upon myself to start my own project. I really just thought about it as a project, and it was an organic growth from when just I got to be 18 and just wanted to make nice rolling papers. And I did a bunch of business competitions for my school, and we'll get into it further, but I'm just really grateful to be here with y'all. And it's a real pleasure to be discussing this with 23 other individuals who are equally as interested as with me in cannabis, because I didn't really quite have that for my college experience. A lot of people smoked weed, but no one was really interested in initiating themselves in the industry.
Hi everyone, my name's Jarrett. I'm the co-founder of Canbiance. I started Canbiance last year when graduating from UC Berkeley. I was studying chemical engineering. We had a CBD study gummy that we saw to be serve as a potential alternative to the Adderall problem that we saw on campus. And just excited to be here and to have an open discussion on entrepreneurship and how individuals get into the cannabis space. Pass it off to my co-founder Hiram.
Hey guys. My name's Hiram. Super grateful to be here amongst other student founders and young up-and-coming entrepreneurs as well. So yeah, me and Jarrett started from humble beginnings at UC Berkeley, and now we are running a CBD manufacturing company. So we do anything from gummies, tinctures, bath bombs, basically you name it, and we're getting involved with that. So yeah, super excited to share our story.
And I'm Maha. I went to UCLA. I also started a cannabis student organization there as well. And I had met Jared and Hiram because they are local to SoCal. And I have recently joined their team to help them out to break into the THC market and potentially obtain a manufacturing license for cannabis production, cannabis product production. So the way we got connected was, they saw the problem with Adderall abuse, and with their flagship product, Mood CBD Study Gummies, it's a blend of CBD, caffeine, and other botanical blends like green tea extract, as well as lion's mane. And, there's a lot of variants. And we're testing it out, doing focus groups with the students at Canna Club at UCLA and USC to see if it helps mitigate Adderall abuse and dependency. So that is my role with Canbiance, and hopefully we'll be in the California THC market very soon.
There we go. Well, thank y'all for those great introductions. So now y'all can get a sense, right? We got folks who are working on the ancillary side, right? Accessories with Julia and Isaac. And then we have folks who are a little bit more plant touching, right? CBD in a way that's a little more ancillary, right? When we think about things that you can do a little bit more nationally. But y'all are doing a great job of transitioning, right? From the CBD, building the brand there and looking towards THC now as that next step. So big kudos to y'all for that. For everybody, we're just referencing the Smart Student Startups outline that was sent over via email. So we have some of the questions there that we'll be asking. and it's also in the chat here as well. And so, you know, for the next thing, would love to know kind of what, for each of you, was that aha moment as part of your journey where you're like, you know what, this is what I want to do. This makes sense. You know, that moment where it really clicked for you. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Whoever wants to go first, and we'll just let it be free form.
I can start. So I had a pretty incredible aha moment, more than one, but really the one that did it for me was I was with a friend's dad, and I had had a problem with using dupe tubes to carry joints around in college, and we were just sitting at the table, and he was like, yeah, I plant my dupe tubes in the garden because I'm so embarrassed by them. And it was a problem that I had, and he was an older, successful man. And in that moment, I was like, there's no way that you should be hiding your joints in your garden in these plastic clear test tubes that often say derogatory things on them. And it was in that moment that I literally went home and kind of told my parents, like, you know, Mark's got this problem, I have this problem. Can we at least try and, you know, fix it or find it? And so that was the last aha moment that pushed me from this is an idea, or this is, you know, something that I think is cool, to this is something that I can actually do.
Awesome.
I would say, similar to what Julia said around there are multiple aha moments, but the inception really began when I was just working with my brother, who owns his own small leather goods accessories brand where we make like handmade belts and wallets, and I was helping him out and making a bunch of stuff. And I guess it was being in that environment inspired me to just see other alternatives. And we were also just smoking a bunch of weed and like rolling up a bunch of joints and looking at OCBs and RAWs and just not really being satisfied with our own, with what we were using. So that kind of inspired me and pushed me to go home and start like cutting cardstock and like folding it and finding the proper patterns. And then it eventually led into me learning how to do graphic design and coming up with my logos and really everything. I view it as an opportunity to share my own art and design with everyone. That's really was why I got into it.
I think our story kind of started when we realized the therapeutic benefits of CBD. Initially, Hiram and I got like a nice little sample, like 10-gram sample of isolate, and started experimenting on ourselves and seeing the benefits for like sleep, reducing anxiety, and then looking at the different nootropic chemicals vetted by the FDA to help with cognitive performance. And we started blending them together with CBD and seeing some positive first, I guess, impressions with our friends. And then eventually we had our first sale. And you know, on that moment, it was kind of like that aha moment of, hey, like, you know, this idea works, it's feasible, it delivers on its results.
So, well, great. I have some follow-up questions for all of you, actually. For Jared, you know, even in that sense, right? Like, where did you and Hiram meet to even say, yo, let's do this together, you and I, you like this, I like this? And Hiram, if you want to jump in, feel free to.
Jarrett and I were actually living together in the same apartment when we came up with our idea. Originally, we called it Berkeley Brain, and you know, we started it because we saw a need for an Adderall alternative, something, you know, that students could use that's not meth, basically. But I liked how Jarrett was talking about our first sale because, you know, we were really just starting out of the kitchen making gummy bears. They really weren't that great, but, you know, we saw the potential there just starting out. And then now we're up to like way better quality in our gummies. And it's just really, really nice to see how far we've come.
Awesome. And then, so kind of circling back, Isaac, and then I'll ask Julia one question. You know, for you as somebody who's kind of solo, but has, you know, had experiences in, experiences, what would you say is kind of, you know, what you've gleaned from your artistic background, design, and things that you've done in school that kind of like, you know, transition to your point, wanting to share this art with others?
It kind of starts with before I even got to school, I was an athlete and only thought of myself as a baseball player. And then kind of getting to a liberal arts school and seeing that sports were not it for me. And there was like a wonderful art community and like really cool resources that I haven't really tapped into. It was just a newfound passion that I just wanted to fully dive in. And to have that and like this building with all these amazing machines and stuff that I could access, and my own project on the side that I could just like take these skills that I was learning and immediately relate them to like cannabis and my own design and product creation. It was just kind of it was an organic moment of growth, and it just kind of continued on for like ever since I was a freshman. It was kind of, it began then and is still continuing right now.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And Julia, right before we get to you, what I was going to say was that I thought you made a great point, Isaac, right? Just around the fact that, you know, there's plenty of resources that you had from your university that kind of helped you, you know, develop a little bit more of your craft, your passion, and so forth. And I would say very similar for myself in somebody who's more of on the marketing, digital media side. But, you know, when I first started, I didn't really have a camera or the best computer to edit on. And so it was like big thanks to, you know, Brown and just the resources that we had there, where like I stayed at school over a summer just so I could be on the computer editing videos, doing bull crap, you know, just because I wanted to, and that was what I was interested in. But it definitely has paid off. And so
I miss those resources.
Sorry, say that again.
I miss the resources a lot, you know, even after being out of school for less than 6 months, it's like, shit, they had a lot of good stuff there.
Yep.
And I guess the best part of like what we're doing with Canbiance is we're trying to stay connected with the Canvas student groups so we can still utilize some of those sources like adjacently. So, you know, that's kind of where I've come in for the Canbiance team, is to be that bridge with university students as well as those resources. So, you know, of course, like Nadir, like this is already like connecting us with students and universities. So hopefully we can use each other's resources and mutually benefit each other.
Absolutely. So great. I mean, I think, you know, there's a list of questions, but there was one thing, Julia, that you mentioned in your story that I just wanted to skip to, and I think, you know, everybody can relate, is, you know, you said you brought this to your parents, you know? So in that sense, you know, I can do the same. You know, my parents heard about, you know, my involvement in the industry. There was maybe some concerns from like my outside family, like not my immediate family, but like folks really just looking in, being nosy, wanting to throw judgment. But that happens, right? So would love to hear just kind of from you, what do you feel like has been, you know, how were you able to get that across to your parents that you weren't just being, you know, a bozo, lazy, stoner, all the things that they say about, you know, that are false?
Yeah. I mean, I would say when I brought this idea, it still took me a while to get away from that stigma, even though they recognized it as a good idea. That's disassociated sometimes with your use of the product. So they bit down on the product idea, but not necessarily still the use and fully, you know, that. I mean, I'm fortunate because they both helped me within the company. I prototyped and engineered the product with my father, and then my mom actually lives in Durham with me and does a lot of the business and marketing. It's unfortunate that you have to convince people outside of your good idea that you can also use cannabis and be successful. But I think with the resources and being in more legal states and having access to actually different variants of cannabis, so a way I was able to kind of tell them that like, I use a topical cream, so even if I didn't smoke weed or take an edible any single day and use that cream every day, I'm still a cannabis user. So it's actually showing people, a lot of people who believe that cannabis is only smoking weed, ripping bong, all of those things. We're now seeing, like with Canbiance, like you guys are making products that are meant for college students in settings that revolve around studying and relaxing and things like that. So it's taking it out of you know, the older generation's mind that it really only stands in one form.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, if anybody else wants to add to that, talk about your story with your parents and how that's been stigma wise.
I like what really got me into the cannabis space was I think my mom. She caught me smoking weed when I was a teenager, and she's a clinical researcher at a cancer hospital. So she did hear about cannabis being used as a form of therapeutic anti-emetic for cancer patients, and instead of punishing me, she demanded a report. And yeah,
I'm
she
sorry.
said, you got to give me a report, Maha. Like, instead of grounding me, instead of anything like that, she's like, none of that's going to work on you. You need to learn about this, hoping that I would find something bad. That was really her intention. But I came back and I had all these different journal articles cited for her, and it talked about benefits and how it helped, especially the cancer patients that she typically sees. So if anything, she nurtured me, and that was, almost 10 years ago. So very happy for her to have caught me smoking weed. But yeah, I'm a first gen American, so it was really hard to convince her otherwise. But honestly, I would not change that moment for anything else.
Amazing. Jared, Hiram, you don't have to add to this if you don't have a cool story, but I just want to give you a space.
Yeah, I'll go for it. I shared some CBD oil with my father. He has his certain stigmas against cannabis, and it was intended like to ingest. But what's funny is actually, he accepted the gift. He really liked it, but he ended up using it on his skin, right, as a topical. And I remember him telling me actually he used it on some bug bites. There's like some ants around his house. He lives in Texas, and they have like some huge ants. He got some ant bites. He rubbed the CBD oil on his ant bites, and he said the itchiness and inflammation just completely went away, almost instantly. He was saying. So I actually ended up learning that the topical effects of CBD can actually help with itchiness and irritation of the skin. So it was actually really interesting.
That's awesome. Well, listen.
Quickly just share my story just
Yeah.
because it diverges in some ways. But cannabis, whether I knew it or not, was always around my family. My mom, she's got her list of issues, but she uses cannabis pretty much daily to help her out. So even when I didn't even know, it was around, and like that smell was very familiar. But until I got older, I didn't quite associate what it was. But so it's been completely normalized in my life in a way that there are drawbacks, but there are also massive positives that come from it. And I think that was a big part of what caused me to launch Z's Life is I wanted to normalize and destigmatize smoking weed. And in a lot of ways to do that is through like high design and art, and just seeing like my mom using it as a medicine a lot. It really showed me that there are other ways to go about this, and this isn't the demon's drug. It's really just medicine.
Amazing. Okay, great. Well, thank you, because that's important to your point of just like, I think the thread that I've heard is just there's information, there's education, and there's experiences that go into changing people's minds. And for me, I've always been a persuasive person. I like just understanding what makes people do what they do. I'm a sociology major, so that's kudos to that. But cannabis was the perfect playing field, to do that, to really start to connect with people on issues that they typically don't want to budge on, right? And that people have been incarcerated for, right? Like we cannot neglect these things of like there are people in jail maybe 100 miles, maybe 2 miles from me. You know what I mean, for the same plant that we're talking about and basking in opportunity. So that's tremendous there. And like I said, big ups to everybody. In terms of the next question, right? I would love to kind of get more into like the nitty gritty of business, right? Of just kind of operating. How does that work? Things that you're, trying to understand. And, one thing we can talk about in that transition is, how do you manage being a student and an entrepreneur? All right. How does that go hand in hand? We're doing a boatload of things. So, yeah.
But that wasn't caught.
So.
Oh, hi. I could take I guess it's just you have to be very decisive and kind of like your time management. I remember specifically, it was like right before spring break 2019. We just had our first sale earlier that March. and Harmon had been able to get us a spot to volunteer at a hackathon for mental health. And so I had a midterm on Friday, and then the event was on Saturday. So it was, just being able to kind of make the batches of gummies like earlier in the week so they'd be ready for the event. And I could use them to study for my midterm, and then hit the exam, and then use those gummies to get through the next day for the event. I think, with balancing entrepreneurship and student life, it's really zeroing in on kind of what needs to get done, both academically and professionally in your life, and then allocating that time and having the self-discipline to carry out on those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think most college students are struggling with time management to begin with. So this puts you on an even stricter schedule. 2 points to that, you're going to have long nights. I remember a story in which, so my product has magnets and has to be built and everything. And I was fortunate enough to use Duke's free 3D printing services to print them. But, at 9 o'clock, I would start building them. And I remember I one night built 20 prototypes and was using a hammer and all this. And I knock some hammers in, and I hear someone mimic the sound on the other side of the wall. I lived in an apartment building, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then I looked at my phone and I was like, wow, it is 2:30, and I've definitely been keeping the person up next to me. That was just a funny story. But I would say the other part of being a student is I actually pretty much use 200 or 300 students as my test people. I would bring that same product that I worked on until 2:30 in the morning out to a party, get feedback, be with the engineer the next day. And so I think while, you had to learn to manage your time, you also had a lot of students around you who were smoking weed and were going to give you an honest opinion on what you were doing. And so, it's two sides of a coin.
I think Julia brings up a great point with the test groups, and overall you're around a bunch of young kids who tend to do the stuff that you like to do, so might as well use them as a sounding board and see what you can get back. The time management part for me, I kind of course there were the late nights and lots of hard work and everything, but I loved every single minute of it. It was just a blast. And the fact that I was juggling so many things and had aspirations that transcended college, it kept me going. And it was awesome to have. I think the most important thing that I loved about college was just the support system around you, and how so many people are just there to boost you up, and you're all there for one another. And so people saw what I was doing, and definitely it resonated with them. So they love to give back love, and that's all you need to keep it going.
Yeah, I would have one point to that is when you're juggling the two, like Isaac said, and you love what you're doing, just continue to study and graduate, because you're going to want, you want to graduate from college. You going to want to put all your eggs in one basket, and that's the company. And if you're able to manage your time and do it 70-30, but, remain a student and make sure you do your work.
And I think what another component to balancing the student and entrepreneur life is, I guess, preparing for that. So as soon as I started college, I also got a job to see if I can handle both. And there was actually at one point, and this lasted for maybe 4 to 6 years, I was working full-time and going to school full-time. And, that was very hard. But I think that gave me the ability to juggle different projects, whether it's school related or business related. That definitely prepped me having a job at first as soon as I started college. So that was a great preparation factor for me.
Yeah, and I mean, even as somebody like personally who's obviously trying to keep smart afloat and doing a bunch of other things, I would say there's a lot of professional foundations that you really just want to rely on, just kind of build good habits. I know for myself, like a bad habit I have is not scheduling calls immediately, right? It's like, there's certain things where if you just get into the habit of doing them, you're going to build just better practices as a professional. you'll save yourself time. One rule of thumb is like, if you can do it in 2 minutes, do it right then and there, if you can. So great. I mean, even so, yeah, I want to keep diving into this, right? What would y'all say are kind of, your day to day, right? When you start working on the business, or, even if you are week to week, right? Because I know, I'm me focusing on school and so forth, but really thinking about, what is it that you're doing on the operations side? What kind of skills do you need? And what things are you now starting to, look for help, because maybe that's your weakness, right? So really, like, how do you go about building this business? What does that look like?
I can kind of take this away a little bit. So my day to day is really working in a manufacturing lab to make gummies. So it's an interesting situation that I have. I actually work part-time for another company. They also pay me, but as payment, they also let me use their lab on the weekends to make our CBD Canbiance gummies. So part of my job is really recipe development, seeing how I can scale up production as most, cost effectively as possible. And also, I'm in meetings with people asking about ingredients, asking about, what types of tools can I use, and just really trying to get recommendations in the industry to network with people who are already doing what I'm doing. Because a lot of people are doing cannabis gummies. I need to learn from those experts to really master my craft and scale up this operation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say your no day looks the same. But I would say in my case, we had to prototype, sample, and develop our product. So I pretty much spent the first 2 years of this company doing that. And then come May, when we had our product in front of us, we had, 2,300 units sitting in front of us. I recognized that I was going to have to pivot and wear a completely different hat. And it was now going to be, how the hell do I sell the thing that, I just made and I think is really good and I know why it works, but how do you turn that into brand messaging? How do you go in front of people and say it? Because now I was pitching for the first 2 years, but it was in a very different way. It was to students and saying, does this work? And now you're taking all that information that you've gotten and now you're turning it and you're pitching it in a different way. I just made this transition, but like 2 weeks ago, I've now given like a theme to each day. So I'm pretty much solo in this too. And so I find that one day it's really easy to work on all marketing stuff just because it keeps you in the headspace of marketing or sales. And so currently, Mondays are my marketing days and stuff like that. But I would say adapt and find the schedules that work for you. And continue to do that because, no day will be the same and you've got to be ready for something to fall on your plate.
Yeah, I would love to just ask you about that because, even just talking about your initial concept, right? Like how, we talked about a little about the 3D printing. So did you have to have design skills? I don't personally know how to make a product like that, right? So we would love to just hear like even those very, very beginning, idea phase steps.
Yeah. Well, the nitty gritty, we made our first prototype out of a metal walker that we found in an alley and a travel size shampoo bottle that we dismembered and literally glued in there. So I went to Australia after that summer with a metal walker, non-smell proof prototype, but it got the gist done. I was fortunate enough in Australia to connect with a Duke student who was an engineer and actually loved to draw in 3D, so printed stuff for himself. And so, I had the visual understanding of what I wanted it to look like, but I could not replicate that without someone who is a designer. And so I think another big thing in this is write your strengths and your weaknesses and plug where your weaknesses are. It's not embarrassing to ask for help. And there are a lot of like-minded people who will see the same vision. I think sometimes we think, going outside for help, they don't understand it or they won't go the direction I want to go, and people will and find that help. So I brought the people in that I needed to be able to design it. The other thing I would say though is at all of those stages, I know exactly how this product is produced. I know the ins and out of it. I can't go and draw it, but I know this product, you know, better than the engineer does. So make sure that happens too.
Definitely. Okay. Well, thank you for the clarifying there, because I think some people get confused. It's just like, okay, it's 3D printed now, like, you know. So we all have ideas. So thank you for that, Isaac. And I would love to have you kind of talk about this too, because you do the social media, you do sales, you do you know, I know you're designing everything by hand, like with, I don't know, bro. You do a lot. So can you just talk about that?
Yeah, it was really helpful to hear Julia say that she dedicates one day to a given topic of business, because that sounds really helpful. Honestly, I don't do that.
Yes.
Do that right now, and I could really benefit from it, because it can be really daunting sometimes when you have these goals ahead of you. You're like, okay, I want to make this amount of sales, I want to sell this amount of product, make this, and then, you know, you can just get caught up in the weeds of the nitty gritty of it. But unless you kind of break down and get into the microcosms of each individual category that operates a business, you're gonna be really overwhelmed. So I personally love making products. I don't love marketing and sales so much. It is not my favorite thing. I will do it because it's what brings in money and makes a profitable business, but it is something that I consistently not resent, but it's just not my cup of tea. It is the making of new products and stuff, similar to what Julia was saying. 3D printing and product fabrication and manufacturing is what I really love. Over the past year, I kind of taught myself how to model and 3D print various objects, starting with just like sculptures, but I realized that was a skill that could immediately translate into product creation. So over the past year, I've really dove headfirst into that, to where I've just developed a bunch of different products that if I need to get funding for, I have all the pricing and everything. That's the stuff that I really love, and it comes quickly to me. But once again, I keep on referencing you, Julia, just because we have pretty similar situations. It's daunting when you work for months on a product, and you think about it and you put it and you invest all this money into it, and then suddenly it shows up at your door and you're like, wow, this is really beautiful. Okay, but it's not going to sell itself. These things just don't move by the way that you want them to. So you have to come up with the narrative and, you know, get out there and do it. And once again, it's not my favorite thing to do. But I think it's really good to scare yourself and just get into it in ways that you haven't, because you'll prove to yourself that you actually can do it. And so, like, I'm really grateful that I have done this much sales and like have pushed myself to do all the marketing, even though I don't love it. It's character building, and you want to take those opportunities at hand and not really resent them, but embrace them. So it's not like I have to try to get all these sales. It's like, okay, I'm going to get told no 25 times, but maybe on the 26th time, somebody's going to say yes, and then I'm going to be able to move forward with this. And if anybody has any questions at all, please, I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, keep dropping them in the chat, y'all. We will get to some of those questions, but I definitely want to give the Canbiance team, time to talk.
So when it comes to the different roles and responsibilities we have, of course, we are a team. And I think after myself coming in, I definitely picked up the slack for marketing and the sales aspect of it. Of course, like through my respective Cannabis student groups with Canna Club, that definitely helped with the sales aspect for Canbiance, because, you know, Jarrett, Hiram, you guys are the chemical engineers and the product developers and formulators in this. And, I've kind of stepped in to help out with those, administrative and those additional components of the business that I I would not expect for the formulator or product developer to put their full focus into. So, you know, another aspect of what I am also bringing to the table for Canbiance is the compliance part of it, especially as we prep to get into the THC cannabis regulated market. You know, I will be bringing in compliance expertise, and you know, I know Jared and Hiram, you guys are going to be pumping out good products, refining the craft, and making better formulations. So I really stress the part of I really stress team development. Like, team development is major, and if you get the right team to work with you on this, on a project, on a company, business, whatever, even homework, it just really helps. So filling in where your other teammates don't have the skill sets for is just very valuable. Having a diverse team with diverse skill sets really like set us, I guess, in motion compared to where you guys were at the beginning. I think once we combined our skill sets together, really helped us move forward and progress quicker than expected. So I really stress the fact of having a great team, because that will really help you out, and it helped us out.
Amazing. Well, I mean, on the sake of team, Julia, let's go ahead and talk about, you know, most recently we've been posting more jobs on Smart, just sharing more opportunities for folks to get involved. There's plenty of stuff there. We also just shared, you know, Julia was looking for some content and account management help on the social side. So I know you've been, you know, on the hunt, you know, looking for folks to add to your team. So can you just, like, let's keep talking about that. How has that been for you? And, you know, what would you say are some things you learned, you know, in that process?
Yeah, so I mean, I use Pangea to hire 2 local students. So I would say that's another way to tap into being in college or being.
Can you tell people what that is? Because they don't know.
Yeah, sure. Pangea is a platform, is an app that really took off during the pandemic to connect college students with businesses of all sizes if they need a one-off project or if they need to intern for a little while. And so I work with 2 Chapel Hill students in content creation, and then I'm currently in the process, and this is something I was going to tap on later, but I'm tapping into Duke's graduate schools. And so I knew that I needed to develop a business plan, or we're funding soon. And so I looked at my own abilities and said, this is, you know, kind of above my pay grade. And so I sent out a note to about 40 professors in the graduate school and the business school, and it got around to a few students. And so totally resonate when you find someone that you work well with and that aligns in your values and sees the company in a similar way, but brings other ideas to the table. You know, jump on it, obviously vet it and be wary of it, but absolutely building a team around you is, you know, essential. And easier way to do that is going back to writing a list of your strengths and weaknesses, and be, you know, blunt with yourself and say you might, and you can also make a list that says what you like to do and what you don't like to do, because you might like to do something and not be great at it. So it's true, or you could be really good at something and not like to do it. And so knowing those parts of you, it's much easier to build a team when you say, I need to fill these positions so that our company is more well-rounded and can be more successful. And then it takes some of the things off of your hands that you either do not like to do or don't want to do. And so that has helped me in my process. And then you'll find people that, you know, bring some of these skills out of you, or you didn't know that you had, or they can teach you and you can start to like sales. So, you know, I'm going through that process currently, and it's been very cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. Because yeah, to this point, I mean, there's been a lot of folks in here. Shout out Demetria Marshall. She's been helping run the Smart Social, right? So there's just been certain things that, you know, you can gain a lot of experience from, but, you know, you definitely have to do that due diligence on figuring out who's going to be the best person for roles, in the sense of, you know, they want to grow in that area, right? Because that's when you're going to get the best results from people.
Can I even touch on that one more point? Is your team can go up to advisors and mentors and people that just guide you in the industry or guide you as an entrepreneur, or so it's even finding relationships like that. Like Nadir and I have gotten on the phone and he's helped me with my own stuff. And so that, you know, that's not your close team, but that is considered your team, because we are all absolutely trying to grow and have experiences, and so, you know, work with each other, and that's why we're doing stuff like this. And that, you know, when we say reach out to us after this, please do, because we have these experiences and we are very willing to share them.
And I love that you brought that up, Julia, because I started off with Canbiance as an advisor, but, you know, now we are pursuing a license together. So, you know, it's a great idea. It's a great point. Like, you might bring in an advisor and that person might actually be very important in your next business step and might be very much involved in that as well. Maybe become your partner, your business partner. Like, I'm very happy to say we've become business partners, right? And it started very differently. It started like an advisor. Yeah, so I love that you brought that up, Julia.
Beautiful. And I mean, I think this is y'all do a great job of just helping me transition into the next topic. And I would just want, you know, the Canbiance team to really just talk about your transition from CBD to THC really quickly. And then talk about, you know, everybody talk about how, whether it's, you know, your university, Isaac, maybe this is where you talk about your startup competition, right? Or even just Smart and Canna Club and how these things have been other, you know, aspects of growth for you, whether it's growing your network and so on. But yeah, first things first, how do you go from CBD to THC? How does that even work?
I can start that off for us. So, I mean, with CBD, right, we have all our products. We have gummies, we have oils, and so forth. We have a cream. And really, when you think about the product development, you're really just adding one more ingredient, which is the THC. Along with that requires more rigorous processes. So you really have to be more aware of, you know, how you're using this THC in the process because of regulation, because of how owning a license actually works. You need to be accountable for all your THC, rather than with CBD where it's a little bit more lenient. You know, you can work with that material wherever you want, basically in any food grade kitchen. You really need a license for cannabis manufacturing. And with that, you know, we seek expertise because Jarrett and I, you know, we don't have a legal background. We're not really familiar with that arena. Maha definitely came in and really helped us out a lot with, you know, filling out our license application and incorporating that aspect in our business. And I'm sure she can tell you a little bit more about that too.
Definitely. So, you know, of course, at the moment we are working with hemp, and, you know, hemp is way more lenient than what cannabis would be. So I know we're throwing around CBD versus THC, but, you know, we really mean hemp versus cannabis. So of course, with hemp processing, there are less rules. There's less SOPs to follow. So with transitioning into THC market, into the cannabis regulated market, we gotta up those SOPs. We gotta
What's an SOP?
Standard operating procedures. So these are just list of steps that you need to follow, and we need to show these to the governing authority for the cannabis business programs in your on the local level as well as the state level. So your city level, county, and state level, you need to prove that you're going to follow these SOPs that you're presenting in your business plan, in your license application. So of course the transition is pretty major going from hemp to cannabis, but it's also like it's kind of like an oxymoron. It's also just a plug and play as well. We have the formulations down, we have our processes, we have been following the same practice as we are, and we will be able to do so with cannabis with additional compliance steps. So we'll have to do a little more record keeping. We're going to have to get more stringent testing done, because testing regulations also vary as well for cannabis and hemp. We're going to need to do more paperwork and doing our annual licensing. We will have to we have to be integrated in metric. So the part of hemp is you don't have to follow these things, but with cannabis, you have to be integrated on metric. You have to do your testing, full panel testing, which means you got to test for a bunch of stuff as opposed to just testing for potency for hemp. And you have to be transparent and submit your annual licensing for the state. So a lot of steps, but it's gonna be quite the transition. But I've done it before, and I'm happy to. I'm excited to get Canbiance going because, we've already got the product, we've got our practices down. So now it's all about putting in the compliance aspect in it.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, just to kind of keep y'all up to date with Maha, because she's doing a lot, but in a good way. So two things, right? You made an excellent point, just kind of denoting the difference between hemp-derived CBD and cannabis-derived CBD, right? That's my bad, right, for just using CBD and THC too loosely, right? Because these cannabinoids are present in cannabis and in hemp. At least CBD is, right? It can be in both. But when we talk about, what Canbiance is operating in, this is hemp in the sense of 0.03% THC or less. And then once you go anything above that, that's when you start having to operate in the cannabis and THC market. So thank you for making that clear. And then the other thing I noted was, what is metric? So start thinking about a little bit of compliance and regulation for folks, right? Metric is the system that's used by businesses to keep track of plants all the way from seed to sale. So from when you're growing things and they're tagging plants in the cultivation to all the way to when it's received by the customer. So this is the government's attempt, and metric is a huge system that everybody uses, all the technology platforms. If you're interested in making a technology platform, you better know metric front and back and front. So that's that. And then I will add these informations to the outline as well. And I'll just drop the link again for that as well. So beautiful. So yeah, not to cut you off, let's spill, a little bit into, I want to get to questions. Just, how has being a student helped your journey? And even some collaborations with Smart, Canbiance, Canna Club, and so on.
I was collaborating with cannabis organizations like Smart and Canna Club. I think it's kind of like a untapped opportunity for a lot of brands. Harm and I just having recently graduated, and others on the panel, just being recent graduates, we know of this college cannabis community and consumer demographic, but other players in the market might not necessarily look at this demographic as intently. But it really creates a wonderful space and relationship to kind of see, what's ahead for the industry. What do these new consumers want in their cannabis products, and then how can we deliver on that value and continue to innovate in the space.
And the focus groups that we're doing collaboratively really help us understand what the Gen Z millennial market is looking for. So of course in California, we are a bit more established. We do have a lot of young consumers out here. So, the ability to do those surveys and data collection, it's very valuable, and not a lot of, some brands have definitely tapped into it, but there could be more because there's definitely an untapped area for the college market.
Well, I would say I used, all Duke students to, sample our product. But I think a big part about being this age and in college is you learn to be very resourceful in college. You don't know the answers to most things. The amount of times you look stuff up, you look up a question or you try and answer that question. These are the exact same things that we do in business. The amount of times that, today I watched 5 YouTube videos on one specific thing, and it's really translating the skills and the way you study and learn in college to your business. And so I think that aspect of being resourceful at this age and translating it and saying, I can do that in the exact same ways. We do not know probably 80% of the answers that our company needs. We have to get them. But we, go through the same ways that you would think to answer a question, which is ask someone else who might know. And that's why advisors are great. That is literally look it up online, because I bet you thousands of other people have asked that question. And if you're lucky, to start off with team members, that collaboration. So I think just at this age and still being in the very resourceful, mindset to try and get through college and classes that you don't necessarily understand is something that translates well into business.
Crucial. Okay. Yeah, Isaac, go ahead.
I would say not starting small is a very important aspect to all of this, and not trying to bite off too much. Because when I started Z's, the idea really began when I was just a freshman, and thankfully the college that I went to, Skidmore, they offered these business competitions, which were like kind of like Shark Tank. You get up and pitch to a group of judges. There were 2 rounds, and the winning business would get $20,000, and like 20,000, 10, 5, and everyone else with 1. So obviously this is an incredible opportunity for any student, and not all schools do this. But I was lucky enough to have that opportunity. So I kind of took it upon myself that, thinking in the long term, by senior year, I'm going to win $20,000 and see what I can do. My freshman year, I made it to the finals, got $1,000. My sophomore year, I think I came in like 4th place and got $2,500. And then I was studying abroad and in Spain the following year, and ended up securing $10,000 and getting in 2nd place, which was just a huge jumpstart for me. And considering I wasn't raising any other money for this, it was just kind of like, oh, this is a cool project. Oh, I get to talk to a bunch of different professionals about this, have them give me critical advice and criticism, and just move forward. So it was just kind of like a rolling snowball, and it just continued to pick up more and more. It got to my senior year, and I did not win $20,000. I ended up coming in 2nd place again. I think it's because it was a smoking accessories business. Kind of hard for a school to give you $20,000 to make luxury rolling papers. Kind of a hard sell. So they ended up going with cookies instead. Cookies, more friendly than rolling papers. But overall, it was the competition totally paved a path for me of how to make a business plan, how to pitch it, and how I want to start incorporating sales and how you actually scale a business. And, I don't really know how to do any of that, but the people that I ran into along the way and all these mentors and judges, they stick around. And like that, even though this is a one-man operation right now for Z's, I have a massive team of people that I can fall back on, and just as a sounding board. And that is imperative, because there's so many decisions that need to be made on a daily basis. And it's really nice to be able to bounce off your ideas off someone, or else it can be a little scary sometimes.
Yeah, you can't. Nobody operates in a vacuum. You think this shit's cool, and then until you bring it outside. But no, Z's is cool. So that's nonetheless. So I appreciate that. And, for now, I want to get into some questions, right? Audience, if there's anything else that y'all are thinking of, please drop them. I saw there was, 2 or 3 that have been passed up. Robert Young from Cornell has one question saying, what fears do y'all have about federal legalization delays? And what do you think needs to happen to make sure the industry survives and thrives through legalization?
I'll hop in. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Isaac.
Let's go, because I'm quick, because I make accessories and objects. So I don't really have to worry about that unless I was pivoting into a cannabis space with pre-rolls or whatever. But it's kind of out of my territory. I can cross state borders and ship internationally. So thankfully I don't have to really deal with that, because I know it's definitely a headache. There
are some, because I'm also not plant touching, there are some barriers. I don't know if you have anything with payment processing and stuff. But the first question about fears is, I would say I would fear that legalization goes too quickly, and then my fear would be loses out on those second things that you talked about. So I hope that legalization comes in a timely manner, but comes in a manner in which all minority groups are looked after as laws and rules are made, and states are on board with what is being implemented. So my fear is that it's done too quickly to kind of appease people because they, want weed legal in all 50 states. But we don't want to be looking back in 5 years and saying, shit, we left some things out that we shouldn't have left out. So I would just hope that we bridge the gap between getting it legalized and absolutely where it should be, but also taking into account everything that needs to be made to create like a long-standing, equitable, and like incredibly functional industry.
Yeah, as to point Julia's
The payment.
remarks, that we do need to have like a social equitable method of adoption of
yeah.
legalization and payment. But to highlight the issue of not being an ancillary company, if you are touching flower payment systems, if you're considering and going into like the product space of cannabis product, it is a hurdle that we want to, I guess, be upfront kind of about.
The website?
Yeah, website
got shut down.
I mean, what payment processors do y'all use? Everybody here has one, right?
We use Venmo.
now we have to, but we were on Shopify before, right?
Yeah.
We were on Shopify, and I know Shopify always has been a bit notorious with certain with some hemp brands, but we're learning from that, and I know there are other ones as well. There's Dama that has been more so for cannabis, and that's one that we're looking at as well. Salal, these are some another payment processor that we're looking into when we get into the THC realm. But so far, we've been utilizing Venmo because the website got shut down. Shopify stopped it. But yeah, I know you have a little more to say about that too. Some other hurdles. Yeah, I guess that's it. Well, yeah, the payment and the website getting shut down was definitely annoying. But to the topic of federal legalization, I guess what I am more scared of, or not scared, but what I am more weary of is rescheduling. Because if it were to be rescheduled, then that's when the FDA has a hand on the pot, pun intended. And with that, but with them kind of having that control, there will be a lot of reallocation of who would be able to continue their operation. So that is something interesting to look at, but definitely something to also be weary of if you have a cannabis or hemp or a cannabis business.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that briefly. That goes along with what Julia was saying. Like, we don't want these processes to happen so fast because, our company is going to be applying for a license, which will last a year. And, if the FDA starts rescheduling stuff within that year and all of a sudden, we can no longer operate halfway through the year or something, there's no refunds for that stuff. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how things turn out.
I'm going to touch back on the payment processing. So, Isaac, you were saying that we, are ancillary businesses and we don't touch the plant. But the problem with payment processing is you have to have a processor who is attached to a bank who will actually manage your money. And the banks are the ones that are, really essentially behind on, and we're talking about big banks. We're talking about BMO, we're talking about Chases, we're talking about those banks of the world. And that's often why smaller banks in smaller cities are the ones that are actually taking on cannabis money because they're not a big institution. But our payment processing story is we went up May 27th. We were taken down 1 month later. We were shut down for 2 months. So we've really, in our 6 months of launching, been up for probably 4 months total. I was incredibly stubborn in this process. And I think in the industry, you have to be a little bit stubborn. So what we wouldn't give on, we wouldn't give these things away, is we were going to speak about cannabis on our website and we were going to show it because we didn't sell it. And we were lucky, out of 20 or 25 payment processors, we got one that said okay to it. But like we were saying earlier, you're better off vetting all 30 options that you get and getting no, and then going back and saying, okay, can we do it if I don't talk about this or I don't show it? Because these are like 3-year contracts that we've signed with our payment processor that I can't get out of. And so I would much rather market and my product exactly how I want it and be told from every resource that it is impossible before I concede on any of those things. So that is just an interesting point on being a non-plant touching ancillary business. We absolutely can be shipped anywhere in the country and you can travel with it, but there are kind of bigger things that you forget about, like a bank taking your money. And that's where federal legalization is, something that a lot of people are pushing for and pretty quickly, so that these things are mitigated, as soon as possible. But it comes with, other things that I'm not even aware of that you guys are speaking about now. And that's where one thing that I believe is absolutely crucial with legalization is companies and people in the industry have to be a part of the decision making on how these things are made, because we know how it affects our business and we know how it affects everyone else's business. So we really don't need the government who is not involved to just come down and say, these are the laws of the land, we think they're going to work. Because rewriting it is going to be way more difficult.
Right. Beautiful. Well, I think to your point, and Maha as well, right? If they reschedule it, everybody's thing is going to get uprooted, which I think would be interesting of them to do with this whole state, federal plays. Like, then you're going to make all the states re-regulate everything. But I've seen crazier things happen in my 23 years of life. And so, all right, great. I think there was a few more questions. There was 2 that I wanted to get to, at least before we left. One, what types of resources or tips would y'all recommend for creating a business plan? That's important.
I'm probably going to sit here and say I don't even have one yet. I mean, it seems like it changes every day. That book I suggested is great. I would say, not to talk specifically about that, but I would say do not let that or very business-like documents hold you back from starting in any way, shape, or form. So do not say, I can't sit down and attempt this idea or drawing this unless I have a full-fledged business plan, because those will come with the creativity and the creation of your products. So do not let just the looming business or legal documents be the thing that you say, I can't do this. 'Cause that's clearly the path I took.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Julia said. Starting out, Jarrett and I, we never wrote a business plan until recently, actually.
I came in.
Maha and I wrote our first business plan together probably about a month ago. It took us about a month to write the full document. And that's, we've been operating for almost 2 years at that point, and that's really our first official business model. But it did feel really good writing it out, going through the details, even doing some market research, looking at our competitors, comparing our products. And then we even noticed, like, okay, how can we really be different than the competition? But, we did do a lot of pitch decks. I think, even early on, we were writing pitch decks, every weekend we would change it up. So those were very common.
And to add on to the whole business plan conception that we did a few months ago, what I would base my business plan on would be what the license application merit score system, or like the merit scoring, would be asking for. So there, if you were to check out a city, or if you were checking out a city that was legalizing cannabis businesses, whether on a medical or a recreational level, you can see what the city is asking for. They will ask you, what's your company? What are you doing? Who's your team? what is your marketing plan? What is your community benefits program like? What are your financials like? Of course, your financials are the most important component of your business plan. But there's all these different key points that the city does require you to present. And of course, this is for more so a licensed cannabis business, but using that as a template for really any business, I would see it be very beneficial. So the way we created our business plan, it was not for a license application, rather it was for a competition to win a licensed cannabis or a cannabis business license. So with that was a very good boot camp for us to see how the actual license application process really is, because there are a lot of different things you have to put in there. You have to show floor plans, you have to show your build out, all the different materials you're buying, and that is the angle we took with our competition application. So just a little more background on what we're competing for. It's through this company called My Green Network. It's a shared use kitchen facility, meaning it's a type N licensed facility, meaning that there are several different kitchens under one roof, and they give each kitchen out as a license. That is a type S license with a type N license, and this is in California specifically. So we are competing for a type S, which is one kitchen within the kitchen hub. So this is a competition. We're not going through the city, but we do still have to apply with the state. But there was a public voting, and it was supposed to be going on right now, but it isn't. But I will link it because we would love for you guys to vote for us. But also, My Green Network does have a guide for how to build your business plan, and I'll actually look for that link, and I'll put it in here real quick. So yeah, that's a little bit about how I approached our business plan, and of course, after 2 years, we got one for Canbiance and the My Green Network thing that we've been pursuing our license through.
Absolutely. Well, thank y'all so much. We are going to wrap this up. It's 8:15 on the East Coast. Thank you everybody for joining. What I would say kind of to wrap this up is just to make sure that, again, for the very last time, I'll share again the outline doc. It has, the LinkedIns of all the speakers today, all their Instagram accounts for you all to follow, a little bit of bios on them, right? So you'll feel free to reach out. And then some of just the key resources that I felt like were important from our talk today as well. And then, right before we hop off, I do want to announce just some of the upcoming events and opportunities that we have. So, upcoming for January, well, Canna Club, make sure y'all follow. We'll stay tuned. We'll be posting anything that they have in December. For January, the month of, I'll actually be starting a social media boot camp. So for folks who are interested in that, we're going to do like a month long. It's going to be like every Monday for every other week for January. And just going to be a 3-part course, really just letting people know the basics of strategy and social media. So if that's something that you kind of find yourself like falling back into, or just want a new skill to pick up, definitely stay tuned for that. We'll be sharing more of that. Additionally, on January 11th, Michigan State, they're going to continue their cannabis business series. So that's great. They've been doing that. We have that all on our site currently on studentmmj.com/events. Mary Mag is a magazine along with Hall of Flowers. Hall of Flowers is unfortunately not happening due to COVID. Really great business conference though. So they'll be doing an educational series in January, followed by our upcoming Women in Cannabis series that we'll be hosting on the Smart side. So some great things on the event side. For opportunities, we still have the Can-Inclusive Research Internship that's still taking applications, as well as OutCrowd Group, which is a B2B software platform in the cannabis space. And Massachusetts Recreation Consumer Council is looking for some folks to help on their policy and advocacy efforts. So, continuously updating events, opportunities, and more, chances for us to continue to connect and build. So thank you everybody for joining. This will be available, in due time on YouTube.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And make sure to get some gummies, 30% off, final sale, man. Check out Canbiance on Instagram.
Z's.
We actually have a drop tomorrow with Carrots by Anwar. He's a cool streetwear brand based out of LA. And yeah, we got our first major collab dropping tomorrow at 4:20 PST.
Oh yeah, y'all didn't know that Z's did a collab with Party Next Door. Y'all didn't know that?
That too.
That too, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, Julia.
Ciao, y'all. Thank you so much, Nadir. You're awesome, bro. Have a good one. Ciao.
Yeah, I mean, for us, just go to nekktar.com, Nekktar, and buy a storage device so that you cannot be smelled out or your product gets wet. So, I mean, seriously, use our contact information in the doc. You know, we are truly here to help, and we will speak on our past and what we see in our future. So do not be shy, because I would say that is one thing that you cannot be in this industry.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. And for anything, I know that I'm going to be hitting you guys up because y'all are great. And it's really fun to just chop it up with fellow entrepreneurs, especially in the cannabis space, because weed's too.
Excited for that.
Ciao, everyone. Be good.
Bye, everyone. Stay connected. Thank you, Nadir and Smart.
Bye.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just gonna be hanging out. You know, Rohan, Daniel, it's good. Oh, I gotta stop this recording.